Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Let me take you through the elements of cycle of conflict and objectives of conflict dialogue. Now, this is spread over 2 slides, and let me give to you the elements of conflict. They can be issues, triggers, tactics or resolution initiatives, consequences. Then for each of these 4, there are the diagnostic objectives and the action objectives. So, what are the issues which could lead to a conflict? To understand it, you can do a diagnostic analysis, and what it would lead to. Identify the basic issues. What is it that we are talking about? And that is a good question to ask anytime you have a difference with a person. What is it that we are talking about? Differentiate between the resolvable and the unresolvable. Please remember, all problems are not solvable. One of the biggest myths of peacemakers is that all problems are solvable. Resolve through compromise. What would be the action objectives? So far as the resolvable ones are concerned, resolve through compromise on substantive issues and working through emotional issues. They are the ones which should be attacked first. Get the basics in order. If you have a dispute with somebody you care for, check out whether care is the fundamental building block or not. If it is not, then forget the rest. If it is a learning teaching relationship, find out, is the fellow capable of teaching? And find out, is the fellow capable of learning? If the fellow is not capable of teaching and if the fellow is not capable of learning, do not try to solve it. The substantive issue is the teacher taught relationship, not who you are and who the teacher is. If you have a work situation, does your superior know what command he is giving? Imagine a general giving a command, not knowing what the command is about. So, when you talk of resolve through compromise on substantive issues and working through emotional issues, please remember one thing, emotional issues can always be solved, provided you have the maturity. Because emotional issues are always predispositional issues. Emotional issues are forever issues of perception and reaction, expectation and response. Emotional issues are always one of disappointment and assurance. And any emotional issue can be resolved provided there is suitable respect and affection for each other. And please remember what I am saying, respect and affection, and I am putting respect first. In fact, it is my personal assumption, you can't have affection for a person whom you don't have respect. You may disagree with that person, but that person should be capable of evoking respect. In fact, my own assumption is, and this is not a model, I don't want relationships with people that I don't respect. He may be whatever. And let me tell you one thing, the world is big enough for all of us. There is nobody so powerful as to destroy a person for all times at all locations. In my limited lifespan, believe me, I can't claim that I have seen all that there is worth seeing, but I have had friends amongst, you name it, the mighty and the powerful, and I have had people who would want to do whatever to me, and they have been so powerful and so mighty that they could undo a mountain. And what I have found is, all you have to do is change the universe, the fellow has become totally dysfunctional. It does not matter, because everyone has only a limited range. 2, all power or lack of power is cyclical. The world is, history is full of stories who have written of people who have risen from the ashes. Just when you have written them off, they rise back to being at the pinnacle. And you have seen world history full of people who have bitten the dust after the greatest of glory. I have known of successful counsels and lawyers and advocates who were making so much money that they had no time even to count it. And within 15 to 20 years, their practice went so vast that the palace which they had built, and literally it was called a palace, was up for auction. Ultimately, you have to have confidence in yourself. So, don't worry about emotional issues. They are the only ones who can really be solved, but to solve it, you need maturity. You need wisdom. Commodities, unfortunately, which are not very common. Then there are triggers. Identify barriers to conflict and events that trigger conflict. I have seen people who get worked up by 2 words. I knew a person who would get irritated if he simply said Radhe Shyam. No rhyme or reason. He was a Hindu. But you say Radhe Shyam and he would be ready to bash your head. And I tried many sources to find out what creates this kind of reaction. I couldn't. It has nothing to do with religion. It is just some association. So, you must understand the trigger. The trigger are these 2 words. There is nothing religious about it. People react because of certain experiences. People react because of certain associations. People react because of certain meaning which they give to a statement. Now, if you think you are the smarter than the other person, which all of us do, please, no exceptions to this. All of us believe that we are smarter than the person with whom we are dealing. And don't tell me, no, my father is so smart, I am not as smart as him. Yes, I know your father is smarter than him and you do recognize that he is smarter than you. But please remember, that's the rule of 10%. There is no generalization which is 100%. So, let us go back to the statement. If you really think you are smarter than the person you are dealing with, why don't you show it in action? Become the more mature person. Become the wiser person. You can't be claiming to be smarter and behave dumber. There is a contradiction. At least I pulled this, or at least on one chairman of a board in a private conversation. We had a nasty discussion on the board, and there was a luncheon session, and we carried the residue over the luncheon session, and he was busy telling me how smart he was and how effective he was and how much I needed yet to catch up with. I said, look, just a second, we have known each other for how many years? He said, who cares, 15, 20, maybe not. I said, let me be very specific, 18 years. He said, you remember all these things, I don't. So, I said, look, you have so often told me that you are 6 months older to me. He said, that I am. You are younger to me any day. I said, then why don't you behave like one? And that had him totally stumped. He said, Dr. Gautam, that's hitting me beneath the belt. Because mind you, this was in public hearing. I'm sure if it was not public hearing, it would have gone differently. I think that's a good argument. If you really think you are so much better than the other one, let's show it in behavior. You can't claim to be better and believe that you are better and behave cheaper. This has to do so much about triggers and emotion, barriers to conflict and events. Avoid triggering a new episode. Please, if you want a relationship with somebody, don't do the things which set the ammunition to fire. You know the person has a bad sense of humor. Why must you crack a joke at him? You know the person is very sensitive whenever you say, in China, because he is so enraptured with China. Don't say in China. Now, if you want fun at somebody's cost, be prepared for the backlash. But that is bad working relationship. Avoid triggering a new episode. Tactics or resolution of initiatives. Understand how characteristic conflict behaviors can generate additional issues. This is a very important statement. I want you to read this and to understand this. The issue may be something very simple and it may lead to another thing, it may lead to another thing and it may lead to another thing. Just go back to the conversation between two elders of your family. You will find a brilliant example. The conversation began somewhere, they ended somewhere totally different. It began by saying you are late, it ended up by saying I do not want to talk to you. Tell me, what is the correlation between being late and being late? And of course, it will be interlaced with a lot of high ego trips. जाओ तुम्हारा तरह बहुत देखे. For those of you who don't understand, get lost, seen many people like you. The truth, sir, is nobody is like me. How could you have seen many people like me? And I use very many techniques to diffuse a situation. I give you just one example. When somebody hears that statement and me, get lost, I've seen many like you. I said, no, I think you are all wrong. We are all unique, which is what makes you so distinctive and me so different. He is not willing to accept it about me, but what I have done is tied him in a double knot. I have made him distinctive and made myself unique. Now, if he destroys my uniqueness, he is not distinctive. Now, that some people see through and they say that's hitting beneath the belt. I said, you don't even have a belt, what's your problem? And now you are being smart. No, I am not being smart. I am just trying to get out of the situation. Why don't you work with me? Change the topic. It works. Limit destructive tactics and encourage constructive initiatives. That is the way to get along with people. Never tell a person he is wrong. If you are really that good, tell him how else he could have done it. Just recall this statement in life. Never tell a person he is wrong. If you are really that good, tell him how he should have done it. And if you really can't improve upon it, don't tell him he is wrong, because you are not that good either. He didn't know how to do it, neither do you. So, stay quiet, get out of it. Consequences. Understand the feelings generated by episodes of conflict. People get worked up. And there are different reactions to getting worked up. Some like to abuse, some like to yell, some like to use their hands and foot, some like to storm out, some like to break into tears, some like to recall nasty episodes of the past. Oh, again MBTI, so many styles to the feelings which are generated by conflict. You have to train yourself to manage your feelings generated out of conflict, and let me tell you how the first step can be taken. Hold your reactions for 5 minutes. And since I am not training you people to become consultants, I won't walk you through the remaining, but I have an obligation to explain to you how it can be applied. If you have a very nasty feeling arising out of conflict, hold on for 5 minutes. Your feelings themselves may change. And if they still continue after 5 minutes, well, then do something about it. How they are coped with, how the feelings are coped with, and whether they will fuel another episode. Now, this every wise person must avoid this. You can't have a conflict which is being resolved to lead to another conflict. There is nothing gallant about it. People say, they are trying to be gallant. Please, you are being provocative. And a lot of people make careers being provocative. Because who would read their magazine if they weren't provocative? Who would come and listen to them if they were not provocative? They do not realize they are destroying it even for their children. But then such wisdom is rare. If people only realized what is the world they are going to bequeath to their child, they wouldn't do half the negative things which they do. But let alone that, people even love to pass on the animosities to the child. You must avenge my death. You merely have to see a movie to see how the child is supposed to avenge his death. I can't understand this. And not through one generation, 2 generations, not even 2 generations, 3 generations. That's what they call the dynasty at war, and that's called real class. If you can carry out a conflict through several dynasties. I know of dynasties who have carried it on through 10 generations. And though princedom is abolished, you talk to an ex-prince of this house and you tell him that you met the ex-prince of that house, they say, they are useless. They aren't even proper princes. We were the real princes. Now, in India, we have a lot of strengths, we have a lot of problems, but the strengths are, of course, I think we are basically very helpful people. The problem is that we all have such complex about our being elite and everybody else being useless. In our own caste, you take up any caste, even within the caste there are the high caste and there is the low caste. They should have a census on that also. What are the high castes, say, in a given caste and the low caste in a given caste. Otherwise, you would never know where the benefits are going. And I am serious about it. Trouble begins when you confuse emotions with politics. And remember, I am not talking of political power, I am talking of politics as the struggle for the control of the decision making process. That is politics. And all organizations have their politics. Remember, I am talking of organization management. And therefore, it is important to understand that each organization has its own set of conflicts, its own set of political issues. So, understand the feelings generated by episodes of conflict, how they are coped with, and whether they will fuel another episode. Assist principals to cope more constructively. By here, principals does not mean Pradhanacharya, does not mean the head of a school, it means the participants. Please understand, like every discipline, management has its own technical terminology. The word principal here is the participants. Assist the participants to cope more constructively with feelings and other consequences of conflict. Let us move on to the survey feedback. Organization-wide intervention. Process comprises of organization members' complete questionnaires on various organizational issues. It is a good way of eliciting a response which people have to think through and give. I have found a lot of CEOs begin their career in organizations with a questionnaire survey feedback. For some, it may mark a good beginning. Receive a feedback on results, very important. You do not have to live by it. because the person who is giving the feedback may not himself know enough to give a scientific feedback, but it is a feedback all the same. Take appropriate actions to address critical needs and concerns. Never ever ignore a collective feedback, even if it is a sentimental one. I will not rule out ignoring it in all cases, but I would merely add, have a jolly good reason to ignore it. Double test it. Survey feedback is a 4-phase process. Develop a survey instrument, and remember, this is not easy. Not everyone can develop a questionnaire. In fact, developing a questionnaire itself needs a training. This is not the best time to get into it, but I will give you one example so that you understand what the issue could be. You can't have more than one idea in a question, because if you have 2 ideas, you do not know where to fit in that response. And there is a whole methodology in drafting a questionnaire. So, if you are the one who believes in a survey feedback, either develop the competency of developing a questionnaire, or get somebody who knows the technique to do it. Then administering the survey is also a technique. Not everyone can administer a survey. Certain things have to be explained. There has to be a certain speed of filling up the questionnaire. You give too much time, it will get ruined. If you give too little time, it will get ruined. Which is why all questionnaires need to be pilot tested. You alter the variables and you get to know which one works, which one does not. Summarizing and analyzing the results. Now, you have to anticipate that while doing up the survey instrument. How will I analyze it? Feeding back the results and creating action plans. The whole process is cyclical. So, another organization development intervention is get the feedback from the participants. Know how to analyze it scientifically, know how to quantify it, know how to deduce from it, and know how to create an action plan out of the results. This is the feedback method. And after you have done this, then you go back to this as and when required. To put it together in a cyclical form, this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, I want you to read this very carefully and understand this. What should be noted here between phase 4 and phase 1 is, this is not an immediate follow up. The next survey development is after a period of time. Let us get to group interventions. The first question is, what is a group? Importance of work groups and teams in bringing about organizational change is self-evident. A group always has a purpose, but a group can dissolve itself. It can be created as a special vehicle. Group interventions are frequently directed towards the process by which a decision are made. Then each group decides upon its own norms. Like for example, most important committees, or let us not get into the number game, simply say a very large number of very important committees, when constituted, do not have a chairman assigned. The group gets together to select its own chairman. So, what is being told to this group is, you are high powered enough, you are mature enough to write out your own norms, do what you think is right, give us the results. And then it is not as if they start fighting, I will be the chairman and now I will be the chairman, no, I will be the chairman. Or better still, after my favorite said, no, I am going to be the chairman. Conventionally, it goes to the senior-most person, because you are supposed to respect age, and conventionally nobody questions it. The group sets its own pace of work, obviously within the mandate given to it. Therefore, group interventions are frequently directed towards the process by which decisions are made within a group. Group intervention techniques: quality circle, small group activities, 6 sigma tasks, and I am going to cover these 3 interventions in the coming few minutes. Quality circle. Now, as you know, quality circle is a label which has been used for a while on a movement which is as old as at least 30 years. It began as quality assurance. But the reason why we are using the word quality circle is because quality circle had a very large number of instruments which were used to facilitate the pursuit of quality. Let me show you some. They used checklist, they used flow charts, they used histograms, they used Pareto charts, they used cause and effect diagrams, which is called the fishbone, they used a scatter diagram. No other intervention had so many checklists, Pareto charts, flow charts, cause and effect diagrams, histograms, scatter diagrams given as an intervention technique. And for a while, quality circle was quite a movement. It is still a movement, only the concept of quality seems to have evolved. Now, if we are going to talk of quality circle, small group activity and 6 sigma task force, these are all group interventions. Small groups of employees that meet regularly to discuss the solution to problems that arise in workplace. And this very often is addressed to design issues, technology issues, assembly line issues, issues which are tangible. Quality circle is not applied to marriage counseling. Let us be very clear. Don't have as a takeaway of this session, now I am going to apply quality circle to my marriage counseling. Now, I do not want to generate a debate on that, because I will find some people with a lot of wisdom shaking their head and saying, why not? No, that is a question which I can't answer. It is like saying, why weren't you born in 2032? I do not know. Quality circle is much better used where there are materials and techniques which affect materials in question. Though I have had people swear to me that quality circle can also be applied to emotional issues, provided you have the skill to do it. Now, I would like to just stop there on that. Supervisor nominated to coordinate the meeting. This again is top to bottom, and for discussing solutions, the supervisor is nominated to coordinate the meeting. This means you use the formal authority to back up quality improvement. That is the meaning of that statement. Supervisor is appointed to coordinate the meeting. Problems are identified by brainstorming. Problems are prioritized. Information is collected and ideas are generated. Solution is put forward to management, and then it is for management to take a call. Group interventions in problem solving or quality circles are primary activity: problem solving, brainstorming, nature of the problem, to analyze the problem. 7 quality control techniques are used. The 7 are listed here. Factors contributing to the problem are also analyzed, and it is amazing. These 7 quality control tools, if identified appropriately for the correct type of problems, almost give you, I repeat, almost give you assured results. Provided, for example, the fishbone technology, which is the cause and effect diagram, is very good in finding out the causative factors. Then there is a small group activity method. This is a non-lecture method. You don't lecture here. You let people develop the solutions through practice, where people learn by doing. The basic structure is small group tasks. The idea is to work together, not to compete. This is a very difficult method, but can be handled by a mature group when it realizes that working together all of us win, fighting each other all of us are going to lose. Unfortunately, that realization is both slow and not so common. Report back to the workshop as a whole how his or her group tackled the particular problem. So, you can have a workshop discussing a problem, and the workshop is then broken up into groups to tackle separate problems, and each group comes back with the solution, and then the workshop tries to integrate it. In each case, you will notice it is the same kind of cycle. You decide through a given scientific method that this is the problem. Then you design an intervention of one instrument, two instruments, three instruments, keep yourself open to more instruments if it is required, and each one works on an instrument and brings back his solution. Then the workshop integrates the solution which 6 groups say have brought back, and see which of them are compatible, which of them are not compatible, and thereby the solution is written. Which is the difference between a seminar and a workshop? The seminar word comes out of the word semen, where ideas are generated for future development. A workshop is a place where ideas are perfected for implementation. Of course, if you don't know, it is all the same thing. There is a huge difference between a seminar and a workshop. In a workshop, you come out with an action plan, which has been perfected through looking at different options. Through a seminar, you come across a method which has to do with what to do with a problem which you are faced. And finally, the summary. The trainer highlights the key points. So, again you notice people work amongst themselves, there is a coordinator and there is a trainer, which means the problem solving group itself has to be structured. Group intervention techniques, there are 3 basic learning exchanges. You notice the building in of the expression learning exchanges. There is a lot of intervention which is now being practiced with people exchanging their learnings, because they have faced similar problems. So, they sit together and discuss what worked with whom, and then they select from him what works for them. Remember, that is the best which works for you. Worker to worker, it allows people to learn from each other by solving problems in small groups. Worker to trainer, SGAM, allows us to listen to those we are training. We get to learn more and more about the realities people face. And finally, trainer to worker. If you notice, worker to worker, worker to trainer, trainer to worker. What is in the first word is from where it originates, the second word is where it is beamed. Here it is worker to worker, here it is from worker to trainer, and here it is from trainer to worker. And there is a distinction amongst the 3. This is the traditional learning procedure of school. And of course, the Six Sigma task force. What is 6 Sigma? The 6 Sigma methodologies are a business philosophy and initiative that enable world-class quality and continuous improvements to achieve the highest level of customer satisfaction. Now, you again go back to the proposition customer is king. I would like to modify that statement into saying an informed customer is king. Don't make mistakes of categories. Don't deify where no deification is justified. An informed customer is king. And if you want an informed feedback, make sure you have educated your customer. A lot of organizations, a lot of corporate enterprises make the mistake. They conduct a survey method, they get a feedback from the survey method. The survey method says something, they say, oh, but that's the customer feedback. It may be the customer feedback. I would like to know who is the customer. So, as I suggested, this modification has to be built in. Six Sigma is the new standard of excellence at only 3.4 DPMO. Six Sigma philosophy uses data and statistical tools to systematically improve processes and sustain process improvement. Therefore, it is very amenable to the engineering method. But the engineering method itself has its limitations, and a good engineer is the first one to recognize that. So, do not again convert Six Sigma into a panacea. It works at some places, it is inapplicable at other places. So, what is the group intervention for a Six Sigma? It is to be projected focused approach consisting of 5 phases, and then like in every other intervention technique, I have defined the 5 phases. The phases are define, which means customer needs are stated, processes and products to be improved and identified. You can't have defining without measuring. Measure determines the targets and baseline performance, defines the I/O variables and validates the measurement systems. Then analyze, use the data to establish the key process inputs that affect process inputs. In other words, get the relationship between process inputs and process outputs. Fairly commonsensical thing when you approach it, but then all intervention techniques are commonsensical. You do not need to be Eric Burns to be told if you have a dominating person, you need a compliant person to respond to it. If you are a compliant person, then the lady of the house, if your husband is compliant, then you need the lady of the house to put on the trousers, as it were. Somebody has to take control. If you have a person who wants logic, you can't treat him like a child. What is so great about it? You go through any discipline, all the basic principles of all disciplines are commonsensical. What is there to learn in heat and light? You strike 2 pieces of stone, heat is generated. Now, do you have to study physics to understand it? So, it is not as if only management uses commonsensical techniques, all disciplines use commonsensical techniques. The business of learning formally is it abbreviates your learning time. So, again you define, you measure, you analyze, then the focus should be on improving. What is the difference between the positive side of a debate and the negative side of a debate? The negative is trying to prove that the formulation is wrong. The affirmative side is trying to prove the formulation is right, but it is a negative, it is a better negative side or against the motion if that side can prove what would be a better formulation. So, you get the sequence. It is not for the motion or against the motion. It is not the affirmative side and the negative side. Ultimately, who presents the better solution? So, it is always easier for a quality mind to propose a better solution than to demolish somebody. And in the process of proposing a better solution, you have already demolished somebody. So, what is the big deal? So, ultimately you need controls for documents, monitors and assigns the accountability by sustaining the gains made by the process improvements. Ultimately, you will have to prove how what you are doing is a better position than you were when you began. That is an intervention. And if after intervention you find that the situation has deteriorated, I am afraid the intervention itself was a failure. So, by definition, all interventions are for the better. Group interventions in the Six Sigma functional organization is divided into project task forces, more focus on specific tasks, constructive intergroup dynamics, payoffs being shared by team members. Now, please remember these three identify the basic three building blocks of action. You have to have a focus, focus must be specific, you need people to work together, and ultimately the payoff must be for everyone. These are the basic methods which go into team building. Create it around specific issues, make sure people work together, and make sure the benefits of action give an advantage to everyone. And those who can't do it don't fulfill the leadership role adequately and always end up by causing more problems than they solve. There are a huge list of references on this, some of them are given here, but let me conclude by talking of what we began with. Namely, interventions, strategies for organization development, individual, interpersonal and group. What I have tried to put across to you are the following. 1. Understanding an organization is important, but it does not go far enough. 2. An organization has to be understood and improved upon. 3. Improvement requires tools also. 4. For these tools to work, you should have proper diagnosis, proper backward linkages, and then you will soon discover when you come to evaluation proper forward linkages. 5. Selection of tools. I have walked you through over half a dozen, and you might recall my caution that this is by no means an exhaustive list. And in fact, ever so often you have new additions being made to the list, and they will continue to come. 6. They do not necessarily work in isolation. They work together as a group. Not necessarily all of them everywhere. You have to put together combinations depending upon the type of issues which you have. You have to keep evaluating them. That is something which cuts across all the 6 activities. You have to keep evaluating them periodically, because you may need mid-course correction. You may realize that one intervention technique did not work, you would want to alter that, replace it. The next process is check out for the results and assure that the benefits will go to everyone. And finally, when the benefits come, create the internal systems and procedures to run that system, which is called refreezing. The system must work. The system must be kept alive. And it is this process of keeping the system working and keeping the system alive that again raises the question of structure and issues, and therefore, the structures of organizations need to be revised, the processes of organizations need to be revised, because the refreezed situation, the refrozen situation, the situation which has again crystallized will have its own dynamics. We will need a set of structures and processes which are consistent with that dynamics. to keep it going. And that dynamics in its own turn will get dated by the logic of what I told you: technology assessment and diversification, continual changes, organization failing to perform, change in top management, attrition of key persons, and the cycle would need to begin again after a while. And that is what intervention strategies are about if you want to develop organizations. And I hope what we have been able to cover will help you to be a better person, have better interpersonal relationships and better group dynamics.